Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swirsky's Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host Sean, and it's always nice to come to you on a Victory Sunday. This is going to be your Chicago Bears edition, and before we start, I want to give a shout out to our Rockford Ice Hogs. Fresh off a win against the Milwaukee Admirals, the Rockford Ice Hogs' next home game is Wednesday, November 26th versus the Iowa Wild. Puck drop is 7 p.m. The Ice Hogs have joined forces with the Brovember Beardathon to try and set a world record for the most mustached in one building after Rockford's matchup with Iowa. Along with the world record attempt, the Ice Hogs will be wearing specialty Brovember jersey to commemorate Men's Health Awareness. So make sure you check that out. Tickets starting at just $8, icehogs.com. So let's just jump right in. Mark Trestman in his press conference after the game said that this was a team win. I don't know if I believe that. I think this was a Matt Forte win. This was basically an example of a team out-Lovieing Lovie Smith at his own game. Why do I say this? Let's see. Your quarterback threw for 130 yards and no interceptions. Ball control. Didn't turn the ball over. Well, he did, but he didn't throw any interceptions. I'm not going to chalk that turnover to Jay Cutler. That was just some bad blocking. But your running back had 112 total yards and 2 touchdowns. Your defense gives up 341 passing yards, only 66 rushing yards. You get 2 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles. That's a Lovie Smith type win. You just really let the other team march down the field, don't give up a lot of points, get turnovers, get timely stops, and ball control. Don't turn the ball over. Slow and steady wins the race. And this is the type of game that Lovie Smith is known for, and this is exactly what they did. They out Lovie Smith. So, why was this game a good team win for the Chicago Bears? First of all, the quarterback pressures is sure. Josh McCown threw for 341 yards. Josh McCown also threw for 1 touchdown and two interceptions. If Jay Cutler would have done that and lost the game, people would have lost their minds. So a lot of people are saying, I'm reading Twitter, I'm reading Facebook, I'm reading the websites, the fan sites, the comment blogs. I'm reading all of that, and fans are still mad at Jay Cutler. But the thing is if he would have had a game like Josh McCown had today, they would be losing their minds and wanting somebody else. The thing is Jay Cutler's not going to be able to win in this town with the fans. He might win on the field, but he's not going to win with the fans. This is the kind of game that you kind of want from him, right? Ball control, run the ball, don't throw interceptions. He only threw for 130 yards, but they got the win. The defense stepped up. The big issue is Jay Cutler was under pressure all day long. They only got 3 sacks, but he had a lot of hurries, a lot of hits. But the same was true on the other side. Is sure Josh McCown got 40 yards passing, but he was under pressure all day long too. I mean, they had sack by Jeremiah Ratliff, 2 by Stephen Pyatt. And Stephen Pyatt, I'll talk about him in a minute, but wow. And then you had Cornelius Washington and Bass. They all had at least 1 sack. And then there was the pressures that everybody else had on him, and he was under pressure a lot. And he was throwing some passes that he probably shouldn't have thrown that he got away with, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is that the Chicago Bears were applying really good pressure. If they can apply pressure like that going forward, it's going to be bad for other quarterbacks, especially when you have a not so good offensive line in Detroit, and you're going to be playing them twice. You've got a Minnesota offensive line that you just burned through last week. So you've got some teams that you can put pressure on the quarterback. That's going to be good going forward. And that's also what helps get stops. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, they're going to keep moving the chains. Sure, you might give up a big pass here and a big pass there, but when it counts, if you can get to the quarterback on a third down and instead of giving up a 20-yard, 10-yard first down, and you actually get a sack, that's a good stop right there. Let me just start off with my good, my bad, my ugly. I'm going to start with my good. Protecting the ball. The Bears did a really good job of protecting the ball. They had the one turnover, which I'm not going to chalk up to Jay Cutler. It was a breakdown of coverage. He drops back and he's in the middle of throwing and he gets sacked in the middle of the throwing process. There's nobody on earth that is going to keep that ball the way that hit went. It was just one of those things. He came from the blind side, hit the ball, hit Jay Cutler. Doesn't have enough time to pull it down. And you can't say, well, you have to have two hands on the ball because anybody over 6 years old doesn't throw the ball with two hands anymore. So that's a no-go right there. But other than that, they really protected the ball. Of course, they didn't throw that much, but Matt Forte protected the ball running. They did a good job. They really won that turnover battle. Running the ball. They did a really good job running the ball. So the Bears were up against the Buccaneers team that's reasonably stout against the run. I mean, sure, they're not the Lions, they're not the Jets, they're not the Ravens. They're not one of those teams that's just gonna completely beat you up on the run. But they've actually pretty stout on the front, their front four, and they play a pretty good run defense. And the Bears were able to, sure, it wasn't gaudy numbers like 167 yards on the ground from Forte, but he got 89 yards on the ground, and they were mostly in the second half. The first half he didn't do anything, so this was mostly second half yards, and they were a lot of timely runs, a lot of first downs, a lot of getting extra yards after initial contact. This was a really good job for the Chicago Bears coming out in the second half and saying, we are going to take possession of the line of scrimmage. We're going to pound the ball down your throats and win that way. And it's something that Mark Trestman has said he wanted to do for the last 6-7 weeks, haven't been able to. And this is the kind of offense that, maybe not the whole offense, this is the kind of running game that he would like to have, where if he needs to pick up 5 yards, he can run for that 5 yards. He doesn't need to pass for it. So that's a really good sign. Stopping the run. It didn't matter which of their three running backs the Buccaneers threw at the Bears. For the most part, they just stuffed the run. They gave up 66 yards on the ground in the whole game. And this was a game where it wasn't a blowout, where they had to be passing to get into it and kind of took themselves out of the run. This was a game where they were running the whole time, and the Bears just stopped the run. Looked really good doing it. That's another good sign. Putting the pressure on the quarterback with your front four. I mean, they sent blitzes, but that front four on its own was getting there. So the overarching theme is that the Bears won at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. Offensive line did a good job run blocking. The defensive line did a good job of stopping the run and getting to the quarterback. Another on the good list is the second half offense. Sure, it was nothing spectacular. Nobody did anything amazing by any stretch. But they did ball control. They had no turnovers. They got first downs. They marched down the field. They had long drives. Kept the defense off the field. Kept them fresh. That's a big key. Is when you go 3 and out, it's not just like, all right, well, we lost this time. And we'll go down and get them next time. It's you're setting your defense up for a failure because those guys aren't getting a break at all. It's completely different. If you were to go get out there and get 3-4 first downs and get to the other side of the ball, it puts your team your defense in a better position as far as field position. It's also putting them in a position where they had a chance to rest and catch their breath and before they come back out on the field, it's going to make them play better as well. So the second half, they had good field position. They were able to put some first downs together. They got points on the board. They gave the defense a rest. It's exactly what you're asking for. Play calling in the second half. Mark Trestman, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't think Mark Trestman is a bad offensive guy or offensive coordinator. I think he just gets very nervous and he outsmarts himself and outthinks himself when he's doing day-to-day, play-to-play calls. When he has a couple things not go right, or he has a couple plays that stumble a little bit, Mark Trestman starts second-guessing himself, and he really starts making bad play calls, and you can watch it go downhill. When he starts having success, he builds on that success and keeps going. So he's a really momentum-based coach as well. So seeing in the second half him come out and make the adjustments that he needed to make was a really good thing, because he didn't have a very good first half. In the second half, he came out and he did what he needed to do. He ran the ball, controlled the ball, and he called a good game in the second half. Conti's interception was really good. I hate on Chris Conti all the time, and I'm going to give him his due credit, because this credit is due on that play. He made a really athletic catch, and I think that's the reason he's in there. He's probably the most athletic of the safeties out there. Is he the best safety? I don't think so, but he's very athletic. He might be the fastest safety as well. So going out there, he made a really good play with the leap up to catch that ball, because I don't know how many of the other Bears safeties would have been able to go up and get that. And then the last of my goods is the Ryan Mundy interception. That Ryan Mundy interception was good too, because that's something that I don't know if anybody's worked on with the Bears since Lovie Smith left, and that's the old tip drill. You tip the ball, and then everybody goes to try to get the tip. And then I think that's part of the Bears' problem, is what's the main difference between the Lovie Smith defense and the Mark Trestman defense? It's turnovers. Is the Lovie Smith defense was always tops in the league. I mean, maybe not number one, but they were always up there in the top as far as number of takeaways. And now they're not doing that. So if you see, they'll get some tips, but nobody's going for it. Nobody's going that extra mile to catch that tip. And that's one of those things, is if you get a play like that where you tip a ball and you intercept it, suddenly your defense comes back to life. It's, you just get pride in yourself. You don't get down on yourself. You say, hey, look, we just did this awesome play. And that was a great thing with Lovie Smith's defense, is they would get an interception, and that defense suddenly switched gears and went, we want a touchdown. And they would go out there and they would block like crazy. And that guy that intercepted it said, I'm not going anywhere but the end zone. And you could just watch it. This team doesn't have that. And to see it today was really great to see. And I hope that's something that's a corner that they've turned, rather than like just an anomaly, because that would be great to see, because I think that would really help this defense, and I think it would really help going forward with any sort of long shot playoff aspirations. Now let's talk about the bad. The offensive line, as far as pass blocking, was pretty bad. To be fair, I didn't put this in the ugly because it was a makeshift line. You still have your right tackle is out, your left guard is out, so you have backups at both of those positions. So they're playing with a new combination of offensive line, and that's offensive line is something that has to gel together. You have to work together, and it's something you build a rapport with over time. That's why the best offensive lines are ones that have played together a while. They really understand each other. They have good communication. They know each other. And it really makes it for a good offensive line. And this offensive line is got some injuries. It's got some backups in there. It doesn't have all of the reps that it needs. So there's issues all along. They did a good job in the run blocking in the second half, but for the game, they were not good at the pass blocking. And sure, the Buccaneers can come after you with their pass rush, but that's no excuse. Jay Cutler was really getting chased around in the pocket. this is me making noises because I really should put this in the ugly category, but I'm not. I'm just going to put it in the bad. The Chicago Bears linebackers. They just are non-existent. It's either on plays, it's either the defensive line makes the play or one of the defensive backs has to come up. Where are the linebackers at? I'm a firm believer in that you need a solid core of linebackers with at least one really good linebacker to have a good defense. You need somebody that's just going to go out there and make great plays. And what would the Green Bay Packers linebacker core be without Clay Matthews and AJ Hawk? You can hate on AJ Hawk, but the guy has been really solid in Green Bay. Any good defense is going to have at least one really good linebacker, and the Bears don't. Lance Briggs used to be a great linebacker, but now he's just a meh linebacker. That's all he is. So between the 4 linebackers, they had a total of 8 tackles. 4 guys had 8 tackles for the game. To put that into perspective is for the season, Luke Kuechly is averaging by himself over 10 a game. So one guy is averaging over 10. Also, to put it into perspective, if the Bears linebacking core was counted as one guy, so one entity had all 8 tackles, and you put them in the stats leaders, they would be tied for 8th today. So that means they were tied for 8th. So that there's 7 people that had as many or more tackles by themselves as the whole Bears linebacking core. That's just not good enough. They're just not making plays. I mean, think about when the Bears had top 5 defense is on run plays when they try to take it to the outside. What happened is the defensive line would stretch it out. The defensive backs would take away the corner. And then you'd have either Urlacher or Briggs slice in through the offensive line and make the tackle behind the line of scrimmage. Those were the good types of plays. You need the linebacker to really step up. And I really thought we would see better linebacking play because Lance Briggs, A, came into the season healthy, and B, was playing for not just a contract, but for pretty much his career. Because if he's not good this year, I don't know who's going to sign him. If he had a good year, maybe he doesn't sign with the Bears again, but somebody's willing to give him a contract. But he's not. He's injury plagued and he's not playing well. DJ Williams doesn't look good. John Bostic, I really thought he would take the next step, and he's shown flashes of it here and there, but overall he's not. Christian Jones he's an undrafted rookie. What can you expect from him? I mean, he's well outplayed what they did expect from him because he made the team and he's actually playing and has started a game. So it's a thing where they just don't have a stud linebacker. Maybe John Bostic and Christian Jones play better if they have somebody like a Luke Kuechly alongside them who is he's the head and shoulders above everybody else and you play up to his level, or he pulls you up, or you play better because he's taking the pressure off of you. Whatever it is the Bears don't have that. So as good, I think they have a decent front 4 and they're getting pressure. They're starting to get pressure. And I think they have good cornerbacks as in Kyle Fuller and Tim Jennings, but they lack safety help and the linebackers just look atrocious. I'll throw Jay Cutler into the bad as well. Why? Because, I mean, he did what you asked. He controlled the ball and he didn't turn it over. He made the plays he needed to make, but the thing is he has a lot of plays that he could make where he could make better throws, and he's not. So a couple of those throws that Marquise Wilson dropped, sure, Marquise Wilson should have caught those, and I'm going to put 90% of the blame on Marquise Wilson. But a guy like Tom Brady would have put that in a better spot to make it easier to catch. Part of Jay Cutler's problem is he's not an inaccurate passer, I mean, as far as regular people go, he's very accurate. But as compared to a guy like Tom Brady, he's not. Tom Brady will thread the needle. He'll put it in a spot that only his guy can catch it, and he makes his players look better than they are. Aaron Rodgers does the same thing. Jay Cutler's not doing that. Jay Cutler gets upset. Jay Cutler, he's not communicating well with his players. So you have miscommunication, and he's saying the right things in the press conference, I guess, where he's taking responsibility and saying, we'll go and clean that up, blah, blah, blah. But on the field, he needs to go out there and say, hey, listen, where are we having miscommunications? Why am I expecting you to do X and you're doing Y? Or why are you doing Y and expecting me to do X? Where's the miscommunication? I think he needs to be a better teammate that way. Sure, he's a fiery guy. Sure, he's a tough guy. But that's not always good enough. Neither is having a cannon, because if you don't throw it in the right place or to the right guy, you're not doing your team any good. And the other thing I was really frustrated with is there was some plays where it broke down, and he could have scrambled and likely got the first down running, but he wanted to roll out and try to make the play with his arm. And I get that, because there's players in this, or coaches in this league, that would kill to have their quarterback not run and try to make the play with their arm. But sometimes you have to make them play with your legs, and Jay Cutler was just not willing to do that today. Is it because he's been knocked around a lot over the years, including this year? I don't know. I can't tell you. But just watching him play, it seems like he's just not willing to make that run unless he absolutely has to. And when he looks indecisive out there, he's not going to make a good play. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Tom Brady. He's not going to make those plays. So might as well just run and slide. If you're not going to make the play, at least, try your best to run for it. My final bad is going to be team hands. There was way too many drops in this game. Watching it, I don't have the actual NFL stats, so I can't tell you the exact drops, but Brandon Marshall had at least one. Marquise Wilson had at least two. Martellus Bennett had a couple. So this was a situation where you had a lot of drops. You could have extended plays, and you would have had more momentum going forward, but you had a lot of drops. I thought Marquise Wilson, had he caught a couple passes, would have had some really good plays. You would have had a different opinion as a fan of what this offense was doing had he made some of those catches, because he adds a new level of dynamic to the Bears offense. He's the key that they've been missing as far as that slot receiver. We just need him to be able to catch the ball. And Martellus Bennett, he's just had way too many drops over the season. He's a guy that'll go up and make a ridiculous catch that you can't imagine a guy going up there and making, but then he'll go and just drop one that hits him right in the numbers and falls to the ground when he's standing still. That's just inexcusable. Is if it hits you in the numbers and you're not even moving, that's inexcusable. You're an NFL player. You're making millions of dollars a year. Those type of plays you can't have. On to the ugly. And for a win, there's going to be a lot of ugly, because this was not a really good win. This was a win that you needed to make. You needed to have this win for morale, for any sort of hope of the future, and to not lose the fan confidence, because you can't lose at home to the guy you just fired and the quarterback you just let go. You can't have that. So this was an absolute must-win game for the Bears. So there was a lot of ugly still. First of all, the penalties. Sure, penalties happen. Sometimes it's just they're good penalties, like getting a pass interference when the guy, if you don't make that, or if you're not going to be able to get there to make the tackle, and if he catches it, it's going to be for a touchdown. That's a good penalty. Or there's a guy who's going clean to your quarterback. All you can do is grab and hold him because he's going to clean your quarterback's clock, and you don't want your quarterback to get hurt. All right, that's not a bad penalty. But some of the Bears penalties they're just really silly. You had the first one is Brandon Marshall with the false start. You can't have your wide receiver have a false start. That's just silly. Doesn't make any sense. All you do is you look down the line of scrimmage. When the ball is snapped, you run your route. You can't hear the snap count anyway. So what are you doing? Moving. Just wait and watch. It's like wide receiver 101. And Brandon Marshall is a phenomenal wide receiver. So when he does a bonehead play like that, you just shake your head. That's some Devin Hester stuff right there. Then you've got the one play that killed the drive with the block in the back penalty on Brandon Marshall. And going back and watching that play, it could have been on Alshon Jeffrey too. Both guys did it. Same penalty for the same play on the same side of the ball. It just doesn't make any sense. Don't block in the back. And I'm not even going to get started on their special teams penalties, because that special teams unit is a joke. And speaking of special teams, that's my next ugly. The Bears' special teams are atrocious. That is not an NFL level special teams. They just brought in this week Mark Mariani to return punts and kicks because Chris Williams is awful. And it's really mind-numbing to me that you are more than halfway through the NFL season. You have not had any injuries as far as your kick returner goes. Yet you're still struggling to find who's going to be your kick returner in week 12 of the NFL season. That's on the coaching staff. That's something you have to figure out during training camp. You figure out who your guy is and you go with him. The Bears saw there was crap in the preseason, in training camp. I was at training camp and I watched it with the crap. There was crap there, and I thought the best returner they had was Michael Ford, the running back, and they cut him. So even in training camp, I'm saying, I don't know who's going to return kicks. I don't know what's going to happen. And the Bears coaching staff, they saw much more of the preseason and the practices than I did, and they still didn't do anything to fix this issue. So you're going to, before week 12 is when you're going to address the issue. That's just terrible. That's inexcusable, and that's not what an NFL squad that wins the Super Bowl does. You're not going to see Bill Belichick do that. You're not going to see him in the middle of the season, after 11 weeks of poor kick and punt returns, go, you know what, the guy we've been sticking with the whole time that stunk the whole time, now we're going to switch it up. You addressed that earlier. So special teams, awful. What else? Their penalties, their blocking schemes, just everything about this off. Their ability to block for the punter. I have never seen so many near blocked punts in an NFL squad ever. There's been a couple blocked punts already, and there's almost been probably 7 or 8 more. This is just unacceptable. I don't know if O'Donnell has a longer... I'm going to have to go and watch film and sit with a stopwatch. That's probably going to be something I tediously do one night. But I don't know if he's just taking a long time from the time he gets the ball, or if it's the fact that the Bears' blocking scheme is just not very good. Either way, they're just getting to the punter way too quickly, and he's barely getting it off. And when he does, anytime there's any sort of pressure situation, this punter, who's supposed to be great, flubs the kick. Look today, the Bears are trying to win the game. They didn't get a first down, and they're trying to pin the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as deep as possible so they can kill the clock and not allow a touchdown. So what does O'Donnell do? He shanks like a 25-yard punt. That's inexcusable. That's when you're supposed to come up with you dig down deep and find a way to kick a 50-yard punt. That's when you're supposed to do it. You're so frustrating, Pat O'Donnell, because the guy we cut to keep you around, he's leading the league. Tress Way is looking really good, and you've got Pat O'Donnell who's just looking like crap. And so, like I said, I can't tell if if the almost punt blocks are his fault for taking too long or if it's schemes. And you have Chris Cluey who sent me a direct message on Twitter. I still have it in there if you guys ever don't believe it, about how DeCamillis is not a good special teams coordinator. And when they lost Dave Tobe, who was a really good one, then you replace him with somebody that's not good. And then also, if you listen to Pat Manley on the radio, he's hinted just the same thing, that Joe DeCamillis is not a good special teams coordinator. So what do you expect? They have no discipline, so many penalties. They can't return anything. Their blocking schemes on returns is just abysmal, and they can't protect the punter. So it's special teams are going to be ugly pretty much every week going forward until they fire Joe DeCamillis. Injuries are next on my list of ugly. And it's not because they were bad injuries like the Joe Theismann leg broken, anything like that. It's that two really key players. Lance Briggs got hurt with a groin injury, and Kyle Fuller, he hurt his knee. I don't know the extent of either one of them. And I know you're probably saying, Sean, you said that Lance Briggs wasn't even playing good and Bears linebackers suck. Yeah, I said that, but it doesn't take away the fact that Lance Briggs has been around this league and seen enough things where he theoretically should be a good leader on this, vocal leader on this squad and playing on the field. So losing him for probably a couple weeks with a groin injury is not good for your defense as a whole. And Kyle Fuller has been a really great cornerback, and you can't lose a guy like that and expect to keep continuing to play well. And he played much better at the beginning of the year than he has over the last few weeks, and I'm going to attribute that to injuries because he's been playing through a ton of injuries. I mean, the guy is still playing in a cast. He's just not the same guy as he was when he was healthy, and he's just playing through a lot of injuries. Look at the touchdown that he gave up to Evans in the first quarter, and you can just tell the way he's running and the way he pulls up after the catch. He just doesn't look like the same guy. That clearly looks like he's battling some kind of injuries and nursing some sort of issues. So I'm not gonna knock Kyle Fuller because I think he's a fantastic cornerback, and I really like what he's been able to do when he's clearly been healthy. And losing him for any kind of extended time is not going to be good, especially when you're going to be playing the Cowboys pretty soon and you're playing the Lions 2 more times. You're going to need a really good shutdown cornerback. And the last on my ugly is Bears' third down defense in the first half of the game. That was just abysmal. Is every time that you could have shut down Tampa Bay Buccaneers and stopped the drive, got yourself off the field, given your offense a chance, then you just gave up big play after big play and gave up first downs. And it's not a good offense. They're Lovie Smith offense, so you shouldn't be able to give that much up to a Lovie Smith offense on third down. You should be able to shut them down. And I'm going to add one more to this. It's the Bears' offense in the first half. I'm going to read to you what their possessions looked like in the first half. 3 and out. 3 and out that they got a first down because of roughing the passer or roughing the kicker. So O'Donnell got hit. They called the roughing, gave the Bears another set of downs. So I'm going to call those 2 separate for for all intents and purposes. I'm going to call that 2 separate possessions. Then you went 6 plays and fumbled the ball, which led to the lone touchdown for the Buccaneers. Then you had a 3 and out. Then you had a 6 and out where you had the big block in the back penalty by Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. That led to a missed field goal that pushed you back to about a 50-yard field goal, and Robbie Gould hit the post. So that was that drive. And then the last 2 drives were 3 and out. So in the first half, you were playing like crap as far as an offense. That just you can't do that to yourselves. You can't do that to your defense. If you keep doing 3 and outs, you're going to burn your defense out. And we saw that with the 9 years Lovie Smith was here. It just created an animosity between the offense and the defense. The offense was just atrocious. They couldn't get first downs. That led to the defense sort of rallying with each other and creating an us versus them mentality. So in the locker room, instead of being us versus them, where us being the whole team and them being everybody outside the locker room, the us versus them mentality became our defensive unit versus our offense and versus everybody outside the locker room. Now you can't have a functioning, I mean, maybe in the 85 you could have a team like that, but now you can't have a functioning team like that and have it work. So basically this whole game was a tale of two halves. And I called it on Twitter when the Bears were down 10-0 at halftime. I said, watch out. Lovie Smith can't make a halftime adjustment. Look for the Bears to come back. And lo and behold, here comes Lovie Smith with his poor halftime ability to make any sort of adjustments. And for once, Mark Trestman able to make adjustments and come out and really start working both offensively and defensively. Statistically, there was nothing really big. You had Forte had 112 total yards, which is good, but 89 on the ground. You had your passing or your receiving leader was 37 yards with Martellus Bennett. You know, this was a pretty lackluster game, but it was a really big win for the team. Suddenly, you are right back in the hunt. If you're actually looking at the playoff race right now, if in the NFC, the Packers and the Cardinals would get the first round byes, with the Cardinals having the first seed and the Packers having the second seed. And then the wild card, then your wild card round would be the Eagles versus the Seahawks and the Cowboys versus the Saints. And with your division winners being Arizona, Green Bay, Philadelphia, New Orleans, and the two wild cards being Dallas and Seattle. But then the teams that are still alive that are right there are Detroit, San Francisco, then Chicago. And then if you look at that, is the Bears beat San Francisco. So they've got a head-to-head matchup advantage. And they have 2 games against the Lions. If they're able to beat the Lions in both those games, suddenly that leapfrogs them over Detroit, and they just have to finish with the same record as San Francisco, and suddenly they're right there in contention with the wild card. They're 2 games behind, which is a lot in the NFL, but that's nothing crazy to overcome, especially considering that the second half of the Bears' schedule gets much easier. I mean, just think, if you could have that game, the opening game against Buffalo back, if you could have that Carolina game back, suddenly, instead of being the outside looking in, you're right there either in the wild card spot or you're right there on the doorstep. So what do you have left? You have 2 games against Detroit. You have a New Orleans team that's definitely beatable, a Dallas team that's definitely beatable, and a Minnesota team that you already beat. Those are winnable games. It's not like your first half where you played a San Francisco team who's tough that you ended up beating, Miami team that's really tough, New England, Green Bay twice. That's a tough schedule. Second half is much, much easier schedule. And sure, you have to go out there and shore up all the things that you've been doing wrong, but that's definitely those are winnable games. Detroit went out there and got roughed up today. Detroit has lost some big games, and they've looked beatable. And it's the Lions. Second half of the season, they've over the past however many years, they've always struggled in the second half, and you get them twice in the second half. You get them December 4th and December 21st. So this is a team that has not played well as a team, looked like they were going to implode after giving up 2 50-point performances to the opposing teams and gotten blown out by halftime and broke all kinds of records as far as poor defense over the past 2 years. And still, you are right in the hunt for the playoffs. That's pretty incredible. And if you're Mark Trestman, you should just sit down and say this to the players. Look at how bad things have been, but look how close we are. We've got a handful of games left. They are all winnable games. This isn't New Orleans of a couple years ago where they just had a juggernaut offense. This is a New Orleans team that really is only winning the division because that division is atrocious. I mean, right now they have a worse record than the Bears, and they're winning the division at 4-6. 4-6 is winning that division. So you shouldn't look at that as a team that you can't beat. The Cowboys looked unstoppable except for the first week for a huge stretch there, but you've got Romo that's got a really hurt back. They're not playing the same way that they have. And if you can keep this pressure up and be able to stop Murray on the ground, you can beat that Cowboys team, especially with the game being at home. You theoretically should be playing better at home. You've already beat Minnesota. I don't see you losing to them again. Basically, it comes down to, can you beat Detroit? If you can beat Detroit, you could make the playoffs. If you can't beat Detroit, then you're just wasting everybody's time. So this Thanksgiving Day is going to be really important, and it's a short week for both teams. And Detroit's coming off a bad loss. They just got manhandled by New England, and they've only got a couple of days to A, practice, and B, put that game behind them, and be able to come out and play against the Bears team that just came off a big win, 2 big wins. So this is a huge swing for me as somebody that's talking about the Bears and a fan, as well as the team themselves, because a couple weeks ago we were talking about what we had to do to prevent this season from spiraling out of control, and we were discussing what happens, what their likelihood of getting a top draft pick is. And now, after a couple of wins, we're talking about playoff potential. And I'm not lost on the irony of this, because this is a really weird season. This is a roller coaster season, and I feel like my emotions are all over the place as far as this team goes. But I don't even know how else to put it. This is just a very talented team. So remember a few years ago when the Giants came into the playoffs and nobody thought they even should be in the playoffs, and they went on to win the Super Bowl? This is a team that theoretically could do something like that, and I don't think they will. I wouldn't put money on it that they would. I wouldn't put my reputation on it as somebody that would say that, but it's possible. They had a top 5 offense last year. They didn't lose anybody except, a few injuries on the offensive line, but as far as their talent, I think they're more talented as far as their weapons because Marquise Wilson has gotten better. So you have a potential to be a top 5 offense, and the defense is playing better than they did last year. So if you get hot at the right time and you don't run into Green Bay if you were to make the playoffs and you don't run into Green Bay, you could go out there and beat people. That's the beauty of the NFL, is it's about being hot at the right time. And right now, the Bears, for all of their faults, for everything that's happened, they've won 2 games in a row, and they've got 5 more games that they have to prove it. They have to lay it on the line. And 3 of those are against a division opponent. So you're looking at 3 division games, and anything's possible. This is the NFL. Anything could happen. Aaron Rodgers could, God forbid, get injured, and they don't win another game for the rest of the season. Then the division's wide open. If you go out there and win your next 5 games, suddenly you're 10-6. That's a playoff win. You could even win the division at that. You don't know what's going to happen with Green Bay. You don't know what's going to happen with anybody else. All you can do is control what you can control, and that's going out and winning every game. So, with that said, realistically, do the Bears win the next 5 games? No, I don't think they do. I don't even think they're going to win Thursday. I think the Lions have a lot of pride and they have a lot to play for. And this is a different coaching regime that I don't think is going to let them fall apart. And I think they're going to beat the Bears. And I think it's going to really hinge on that defensive line of the Detroit Lions getting a lot of pressure on Jay Cutler and not being able to run the ball like they did today. And I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a situation where Mark Trestman's going to want to establish the run again. It's not going to go anywhere against that really tough Lions front four. They're going to try to start throwing the ball, and that's when it's Sue and Farrelly and all those, Ziggy Ansah, all those guys are just going to pin their ears back and go after Jay Cutler, and they're going to get to him. I don't see the offensive line holding strong and being able to protect Jay Cutler enough to put enough points on the board to win. I don't see the Lions going crazy on offense either, but this is definitely a game that they'll put up 21, 24 points and win the ball game. So I'm going to say Lions are going to win 24-13 and really cement the Bears as out of the playoffs. But anything can happen, and the Lions could go into spiral mode after the last game, and this being continuing their trend, and Matt Stafford could go out there and throw 3 interceptions, and the Bears really turn it on. But that's why they play every game, and that's why they say on any given Sunday. With that, I'm going to end this podcast. And if you are listening still, definitely check us out on the internet at www.swerskisports.com. That's SWERSKI sports.com. You can check us out on Twitter at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports. We're also on YouTube, youtube.com/Swerski Sports. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, right off of our website. However you do listen to us, make sure you hit subscribe. And if you are so inclined, give us a 5 stars or whatever. Leave comments, because the more that happens, the higher they boost us in the search engines, and that makes more people listen. More people listen, we can get more guests and do more and build up my self-esteem. So then my newborn daughter, I can be like, look what daddy does, and she won't be embarrassed. Definitely check us out of there. And until next time, bear down and enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.